Hey, you guys, it's good to see everyone. I wanted to hop on a live here real quickly because I keep getting more issues around this particular problem. And it really has to do with shutting down. So, in this live, I'm going to share with you why human beings, it's mostly men, but I do see it for women, why they shut down emotionally and why someone might go cold in the relationship as soon as things start getting really, really good. I was talking with one of my friends, a client, and then another person, all within the last 3 days. And they all brought this issue up where they were in a relationship. It felt really good. They liked the way or the direction that it was going. And then suddenly the person totally went off the map, shut down, cold, out of nowhere. And all my friend, my client, and this other individual were all really, really upset and hurt by it. And so I wanted to address this because it seemed like it was coming up in the collective in the world. So I wanted to share with you exactly why this happens and the dynamic, the emotional dynamic that's happening here. If you start off a relationship, right, and suddenly the other person goes cold and you don't hear from them or they shut down and everything was going really, really well, two things came up. The first one is it was actually getting really emotionally real for them. And that person, if they shut down and the relationship started feeling really good and suddenly they went cold, it's because it was becoming a real emotional reality for them. And they were about to expose parts of themselves that they might still have fear, shame, or guilt around. Fear, shame, and guilt are the emotions that lock in a certain aspect of ourself that we're afraid to share with the world. And in interpersonal or love relationship, what happens is when we share those darker parts of ourselves, those deep, quote unquote, shadow aspects of ourselves with another person, it can be really scary. And some individuals aren't ready to share that part of themselves in relationship because they're still ashamed of it. And so if there's that emotion of shame or guilt, or there's that repression and suppression in their energy field, and that might play out in the relationship. So if you're finding your potential spouse or your potential partner shutting down emotionally and suddenly going cold out of nowhere, it's because they have some aspect of themselves, a shadow aspect that they haven't integrated yet, that they haven't fully accepted yet, or they haven't fully shed the light of consciousness on, and they're afraid to share that with you. I know in my own life, and I remember I was in one relationship 4 years ago where I deeply, deeply loved the woman, really cared for her. And then it finally got to the point where we were sharing our shadows. And I was really scared to show her some of my shadows, but I still brought them forward. And she got really freaked out and ran and was like, nope, can't take it. It's too much. And then in response to that, I shut down. So if you're finding in your relationships a significant other, a partner, if the relationship feels really good and then you find that other person suddenly shutting down, it's because they still have yet to shine the light of consciousness on that part of themselves that still has shame, that still has maybe guilt or fear. Now, typically what I see with men, and I used to see this with myself, typically what I see with men is men are really worried or scared to show their true feelings around anger and frustration because they're so intense and primal, and they're afraid of scaring their wife, or they're afraid of scaring their significant other. I was recently talking with someone who had this exact issue, and they were confused as to why suddenly the person shut down. And I could clearly see that this man still had a lot of internal repressed anger, upset, a lot of fear. All this was like compressed, and I could see it. And I could see that he was worried about sharing that shadow aspect of that part of him with his significant other. And so what he did was he closed down. And when he closed down, she felt the emotional disconnect. I want to say this again. I say it all the time, guys, emotional intimacy. If you want to have true connection, You have to be able to share your dark aspects, your shadow aspects with your partner, and your partner needs to feel safe enough to be able to express those parts of them. You cannot have emotional intimacy, which creates a deep feeling and an awesome sense of safety and connection. You cannot be emotionally intimate with another person unless they feel safe enough to share those shadow aspects. It's so important to get a hold of this. It took me years to understand this, but it's so important. If you don't feel safe enough to express those shadow aspects of who you are, and you shut or compartmentalize that part of yourself, which I see men do more often than women, just because most men are trained or conditioned in society to shut down their emotions. If you try to compartmentalize your emotions like that and you don't share all the aspects of who you are with your partner, you will kill your emotional connection. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with men where they've said, I don't tell my wife everything, or, I don't tell this person everything because there's some things that they're just not going to understand. Well, that's not necessarily true. Yes, there might not be some aspects that they can't understand, but that doesn't mean that they're not willing to try. I've found that women are incredibly attentive. They're more intuitive about sharing power in the relationship. They have no problem with sharing power and admitting that they're wrong. That they're quick to drop their ego, much quicker than men are. And there's an evolutionary reason because of this, which I don't really need to go into now. But the important thing here is that you give your partner the feeling of safety that they can share those shadow aspects with them. Too many times in relationship, what I see is someone has a quote unquote shadow desire, or something that other person, they would be afraid to tell their partner because they don't want to trigger their partner. And so then what happens is they repress that shadow, they repress that desire, they don't share it with the partner, and it's the emotional connection suffers. If you want to have great sex, if you want to have great emotional intimacy, if you want to have a deep connective relationship, you have to share those shadow aspects. Those shadow aspects is what's going to make the relationship juicy. And if you get a sense that your partner can't hold space for those shadow aspects that you have, then voice that. Say, look, there's some things that honestly I'm a little scared to share with you because they might be triggering, but I know that if we handle this and build a safe space and container for this, then we can actually deepen our intimacy and deepen our love and our connection. So it's really important to share those shadow aspects of yourself with your partner in a healthy and safe way or manner. If you need to bring in a coach, a therapist, or anyone else, do that. If you need to create boundaries and say, hey, let's work this out in a safe manner. I know this might be triggering for you. This is triggering for me. Create safe space for it. It's so important to be able to create that safe space. A lot of men I've seen have, parts of them. I know for me, years ago, I used to have really shadow anger aspects left over from the military that I was terrified to show my partner. I can remember in one relationship 4 years ago that I had all this anger left over from war. And I was like, my God, all this anger left over from war. If I share this with my spouse, my significant other at the time, she would be terrified. And so I hid it and repressed it, but that actually played out in unconscious ways. And that's usually what happens if we don't feel like we have safe space to share our true feelings and those parts of us that are really scared to be seen. If we don't share those shadow aspects with our partner in a safe and healthy way, then they get played out in really unconscious, unhealthy ways. I've seen it play out in affairs with individuals. I've seen it play out in different addictions that eventually will play out in the relationship. So it's really important, guys, please, 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 if you're in a deep, intimate connection and you suddenly feel your partner shut down or emotionally pull back, it's because they have something within them that they feel really nervous about sharing with them about themselves, and they don't feel safe enough to share that aspect of themselves yet. Every single day, I see people walking around in the world. Some of them are family members, some of them are friends, some of them are not friends. I don't really have those people in my life, but some of them are family members. Some of them are people I see in society where they're crying out for emotional support, or they're crying out for a part of them to be seen, but they don't even know it, and other people don't even know it. We're always communicating. Remember, emotional expression is a communication. Just because your partner or someone, even your child, just because they might not be communicating something verbally because they haven't developed their voice or they haven't linked their throat chakra with their heart chakra yet, even if they are communicating, or if they're not communicating at the mental level yet, but they're communicating at the emotional level, they're still communicating to you, right? So physical movement and emotional expression, whether there's that mental verbiage or whether there's that mental communication there or not, it's still a communication. There's all these types of expressions that human beings do every single day that I see that a majority of society hasn't been it's sad to say, but we haven't been trained to pick up on. Emotional intelligence is really important. So in summary, if you're finding your partner shutting down when the relationship or the connections felt really good and suddenly they just thump, it's because there's a part of them that is scared to be emotionally vulnerable. And that means that they have a shadow aspect of themselves that they have not learned yet to love yet, and that they're afraid of sharing with you. Don't be afraid to go into that space with your partner in your relationship. In fact, most of the times people think the very things that you think are deal breakers in a relationship are actually the very things, they're opportunities for you to increase emotional intimacy and take it to the next level. That's all I got for this time, guys. Thanks for hopping on this live. I hope you checked out the interview earlier I did with Lisa. It was really great. We really went into some deep topics about codependence, interdependence. There was so much more there. Check out that interview and what she was about. She did some awesome things. If you guys have any questions, comments, or thoughts, please feel free to share them. I'm always keen to respond to the thoughts, and I'd love to hear if you guys got any ideas for content creation, or you guys have any thoughts or anything like that. Please feel free to share. Also, check out the link in the description box. Laura and I are doing a sacred relationship series, so we're interviewing major relationship coaches and therapists. We're also doing live coaching. So if you want to sign up for live coaching, we'd be delighted to have you. That's all I got. Thanks for joining. I'll talk to you soon, guys. Have a wonderful week.